Hi, John. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Very excited and looking to, I guess maybe if I look forward to the end, right, what do I want to leave people with? I want to leave them with a new idea on maybe how they think about work and consider the evolution of work for their organization in such a manner that they can change some of the outcomes, things like bank efficiency ratio, just an improvement in general of overall human staff. So I guess with that, folks, I will get right into it. If hopefully you guys are seeing my screen clearly enough, there's an existential crisis in banking and financial services and insurance, and probably it goes without telling any of you it all comes down to a lot related to work, right? Growth for an organization is expensive. Finding those new hires is very difficult to do. We live through a time of socioeconomic disruptions coming out of a pandemic, for example. War is impacting things in business across the globe. Uh, Sanctions create new difficulties for banks that are financing certain partner organizations. There's criminality. People can be depended on in some cases to do the wrong thing, and all these factors add up to very difficult operational conditions in work product. Probably the more important thing is that innovation itself is lagging, both as an organization thinking about changing itself and moving along in creating a very sticky environment to really wow customers. Um, the PwC conducted a study they do annually. It was their 27th annual that was issued last December. I'll get into that in a moment because it's got important bearing on this discussion and how you think about what your organization is doing. If I consider it, state of work really since the 1950s has not changed very much since the advent of the mainframe. If you take the gray outer circle as the entire work product output of your organization, the three things that we've always talked about are people, process, and technology, right? That was how work accomplishment was achieved. However, as time has gone by, we've and certainly technology has evolved and added to its great repertoire. We've understood that the people process technology model scale is very costly. There's a work to return mismatch. And I know that's kind of a strange statement to make, but it really boils down to the work that humans are doing compared to the work that you could have automated, right? And do through an AI based means, right? This is a very key theme here that you'll hear shortly. Finding data is not generally regarded really as something that is easy to get to. We've got people doing swivel chair. We've got people running all over the organization and doing things in a manner that, again, it's just not very effective. This creates a scenario of very low value but mission critical work for organizations that has to be accomplished by humans, which tend to be expensive. They tend to get bored with very rote type work that's unimaginative and doesn't really take advantage of the full spectrum of skills that humans are able to bring to bear. Oh, sorry, went backward. So how did we get here, right? Well, as I mentioned, this work has evolved out of a 1950s model that was great for several decades. It's centered around, it was very human centered around the process and the orchestration of workflow and how work was accomplished. Um, Most existing software products to this day are still geared toward that type of a model. So if you think about it in terms of whether it's a CRM system or an ERP platform or general ledger or even creating reporting, there's not a whole lot that is actually independently done by the tools most humans use in computing, right? And that creates a bit of a difficulty, creates a lot of difficulty. And what it doesn't really address in that sense is the work that has to be done, right? So we've got humans misaligned to the work that they should be doing versus what they have to do to keep the operation running. I mentioned the PwC, the 27th annual CEO survey. This is a really important component because uh, they've identified exactly what Knowledge Lake's belief system encompasses, right? There's a lot of business model reinvention that has to occur, but there are a lot of issues around even considering what that means. AI and Gen AI in particular, as we think about that hitting the market, 2 years ago, 2 years ago next month, if you think about ChatGPT coming on the scene, it has done a lot of great things. However, it's also done a lot of things that maybe it shouldn't have done. There was an article, for example, this morning in the BBC, was talking about that the Gen AI is actually creating much more stressful situations for workers. It's actually creating more work for them because it's additive to their duties. So they're not getting that break to do things in a different way. And PwC identified it through these interviews with 4,700 CEOs across the globe that the real win for organizations is in making people more valuable, making them do the work that is much, much more innovation related and changing how the organization works. And really to kind of put a finer point on it, they basically came right down to underscoring what the CEO's concerns were or are, which is that almost half of those 4,700 CEOs interviewed believe their company's not going to be viable in 10 years. I think about if you took half of the largest corporations on the planet and removed them because in 10 years they're just no longer viable, right? That is an action moment. And I think what it really speaks to is the fact that we've been thinking about the issues more as a technological problem and not as what it really is, which is a work problem. Right? You'll hear that said around Knowledge Lake a lot. You've got a work problem, not a technology problem. This comes right to the heart of it. This is a tremendous slide. There's a futurist by the name of Scott Klosowski, who he's web or podcaster rather, very very deep thinking on things. And what Scott has come to conclusion on is that digital disruption can't occur in the way that we think it can because unfortunately people and organizations evolve linearly, right? Just think about your own the way that you come to conclusion on things. It follows a very plodding linear path. The way that technology, particularly AI and synthetic intelligence, is what Scott would call it, that evolves at a very exponential rate, right? In between, we get what we call the tech debt gap. And that is the skills and the tools that we're using and the misalignment and the adoption around those, right? It just makes it very difficult psychologically for organizations and individuals to change. I'll come back to this in just a moment, but it's a very key element to what we're discussing here, which is AI is not being levered in the manner it really should or could be. There's a much better, more perfect, quote unquote, killer use case for it. Um, the way that we view it is that there is a new need, a need to work in a new way rather than the model that came before. Right? It did a great job for 70 plus years, but the evolution of things, including the AI, have really driven us to a point where we've got a whole new capability set. So again, if you look at that outer gray circle encompassing the Venn diagram as the total work product output of your bank, your insurance organization, whatever you're really pointed at, it's not just people, process, and technology. You can now introduce an entirely new source of labor called synthetic labor and the associated data that goes together with that work, right? And that improves the quality of work output. It improves the consistency of the work output by removing mistakes and speeding things up, removing backlogs. There's a reliability to it that it will be done the same way every single time as you see fit and as you configure it. Um, and it restructures the time, most importantly, that humans will be able to use. They'll recapture that time that they might spend on very low value work and move into things like thinking about how they innovate, thinking about new product, thinking about the execution and interaction with customers, and really evolving it to be a much more uh, organization, much more of an audience of one, right, in how it interacts with the clients. And of course, this deeply impacts the mission outcome through reduced cost, reduced uncertainty, and reduced hiring. What I will say in adding to this is that if you look at something that we call repatriation, it also enables the repatriation of offshored outsourced work that most organizations have sent over to India or to Brazil or near shore to maybe markets in Canada or over to the Philippines, right? If you think about these places, there are dynamics that are going on, whether it's time zone oriented, whether it's in the case of the Philippines, there's been all over the news a great deal of concern over the Philippines' relationship with China and some of the aggressive behaviors that have been shown toward the Philippines. I wouldn't want to leave my work in an area where I question whether it can be delivered within the framework of what I need. Right. So how do you adapt to the inevitability of this future known as AI, right? And the work capabilities that AI can bring. You've heard me mention a couple of times the term synthetic labor. That is a key term for us here at Knowledge Lake. And one of the things that means is that it is an amalgam of not just the AI capability, ChatGPT, for example, it's the workflow orchestration. You'll hear Gartner talks about this a lot now. Saikat Ray is onto this term called BOAT, business orchestration automation technologies. And it's the merger of those things that they feel is going to unlock an enormous amount of value for organizations in banking and financial services, just generally, right? It is also an incorporation of IDP, right? Intelligent document processing. That is the bringing in of documents, the digitizing of documents, as you all know. There's work upstream of that, and there's work downstream of that document. If that document represents the atom, the work around it or the electron shell, right? That is also part of synthetic labor. And then again, coming back to that notion of the full use of unstructured as well as the structured data, it's integral to the mission of synthetic labor. We've got to account for the unstructured data because, as the old saying goes, 70 to 80% of most of an organization's most beneficial data is unstructured and hence unusable. You have to have a platform that can consume the unstructured data and make it available across the work spectrum for the organization. Right. This means that white collar office work no longer human dependent. You've now introduced a second source of labor known as synthetic labor, right? And you're incorporating that labor to drive deep efficiency through a new division of labor, again, hiving off the work humans shouldn't be doing as opposed to the work they should be doing, and having more appropriate duties in a revised workflow that is really focused far more on elimination of work waste. Um, I like to underscore because I know I'm hitting you with a lot, and these are some pretty substantial thoughts. This is from McKinsey. This is right out of their playbook, and they talk about the 5 core elements of operational excellence. I view this as the Maslow's hierarchy for operational excellence, right? So each level, the upper levels are dependent completely on the lower levels, right? You can't progress up if you haven't built out the foundation. If I look at the 2 foundational elements, the technology and the technical systems, right? Those are things that are critical to doing things. This is what synthetic labor provides, right? So it's kind of core to augmenting human capabilities for improvement and innovation, and it's eliminating the work race that ultimately results in shareholder value increase. And as if to kind of take this to an even more intimate level, you're really changing the org chart, right? If you look at this image over here on the right, what you're doing is you're using a combination of 2 sources of labor now, right, to improve bank efficiency ratio, repatriating offshore work, creating an environment where you're more adaptable and competitive to each of the local global markets you may work in. And again, we've talked about the innovation, but we haven't talked about those net promoter score. deepening those relationships through much more improved work product delivery. And in a lot of cases, this is the first significant win using AI. Again, it turns out that that killer use case for AI is work and growth without additional headcount. I know I'm kind of running short here. I just want to touch on a few of the organizational challenges because nowhere is a panacea, and these are things to be aware of. Um, what we've seen the very best in class doing is there is a C-suite leader that's acting as an executive sponsor for this because it is a change the bank versus a run the bank, or a change the insurer versus a run the insurer approach, right? There's just no simple way around that. It will be a cultural shift, not only for the managers, but as well as the knowledge workers. What does it mean to my job? What does it mean to me? I now have 500 people, but what will it mean if I've now got 300 people and 100 synthetic laborers? What does that mean for me as a profession in my career advancement? And then thinking beyond the use case to accept synthetic labor as a genuine human like source of work capacity. But again, on the right side, a lot of benefits come out of that, right? And you'll have these access to these slides so you can review this and see that in a little bit more clarity. I'll end on this. There's a lot of comparisons between synthetic labor and RPA. They're nothing alike. They're a generation apart, and there is a lot that work automation through synthetic labor brings that RPA was never able to address. This is really the evolution of that world. And I want you to keep in mind there's what we refer to as the three R's: repatriate, right? The repatriation of processes back to ownership. And then there's the relief of people that are just getting burned out because they have too much work to do, and it's low volume or high volume, low value return work. AI is accelerating that for people. It's not necessarily improving it. Again, I'll reference the BBC article from this morning, and it's the ability to reimagine or innovate the organization. Right, these are big ideas. So if you're looking for promotions, for example, bringing a big idea like this upstairs typically will result in promotions. We've seen that throughout the work that we do with our customers. It's a growth moment for organizations to change how they work and really rethink things in a much more productive environment. Uh, John, that's what I've got for you today. I hope it was compelling and create some good ideas for folks.
Oh, yeah, food for a lot of good thought there. We have about 1 minute for a question, and I'm going to add to it. Um, Generative AI specifically has an issue with hallucinations.
Yeah,
How do you ensure responses are real? And I'm going to throw in, and what about hypnosis? How do you show or keep
yeah.
confident that they're honest?
Yeah, it's a fabulous question, John. Thank you. We enlighten the large language model at four different levels, right? We start with day zero accuracy. This is what the large language model already knows. Then we nest. Our platform is actually creating clarity and disambiguation by running specific examples through what we call prompts. Most people would, we call hints, but most people know as prompt engineering, right? That tell the model to look out for these specific things. It's what perfect looks like. And then the third thing is we educate through honing those hints, right? When something looks like this, it actually means this to avoid the scenarios that you're describing. And at the highest level, we're doing deep exception monitoring. So it's all in an effort to avoid the hallucinations and the hypnosis of the models as you describe it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for all of it. And for joining us today. Everybody,
Thank you, John.
please be sure to check out the Knowledge Lake resource room for a chance to win a free consultation. Could be very useful, could be very valuable.